Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, my friends. Today I want to talk about the future of Street Fighter by perhaps looking at the past of Street Fighter. Street Fighter 6, the newest Street Fighter, is an inevitability. We all know what's coming, right? Either through some of the leaks or through just sheer common sense. It's coming, we all know it. Any possible speculation on how things might work in a Street Fighter 6? Well, very difficult, right? As the game's not even announced yet. But there is one focal point in Street Fighter that might give us a little bit of a hint. And that resides in Ultra Street Fighter 4. One of the most interesting things about Street Fighter 4 is they let you pick any revision of any character. No matter what version of the game they were, you can pick that version, including an all-new version called Omega. Omega was not there to be balanced. Omega was there to be a little bit crazy. And also a test bed for future projects. Ryu would be the classic example here, as a lot of what was in this mode became Street Fighter V Ryu. Adding new target combos, added to Street Fighter V. They gave him a parry, and sure enough here, they put it in Street Fighter V as well. That became his V skill number 1. So you can see certain things are carrying over. Some things didn't even happen right away, like a big smash attack after his parry. That would take a couple of years to implement, but he did eventually get it. It's what would eventually become his V-Trigger 2 parry. So as you can see, there's a lot of sowing the seeds for the future in this specific thing, like Honda as well. Normally Honda, if you want to do 100 hand slap, you needed exactly 5 inputs. If you did 4 inputs, you wouldn't get anything. Omega Honda though, you had 4 inputs, you could get your 100 hand slap. So one less input, making it a lot easier, making it a lot more precision based so you didn't have to mash. And even though it took years for Honda to make Street Fighter V, that's how it wound up being. Exactly 4 inputs, so you can do a controlled mash, or you can just do the piano method and get it pretty simply, a lot easier for everyone. Some ideas didn't even land on the character they gave it to, like they gave Seth Chariot Tackle as a regular move in Omega mode. And Close Heavy Kick, they gave you the ability to charge it, and if you charged it, you could combo after the fact. So here's Seth doing this, right? And sure enough, Urien can also now do Charge Heavy Kick and the combo in the corner. It was his moves to begin with, I guess, so fair enough. Bison got a move that drained meter from the opponent, that would later become Tragedy Assault for Nash in Street Fighter V. So lots of examples of things carrying forward, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So that all said, and with Street Fighter 6 in mind, since a lot of characters in Omega mode had what they had carry forward to the future one way or the other, or at least had properties of it carry forward to the future, what about the characters who never made it into Street Fighter 5? Characters who perhaps have a decent chance of making Street Fighter 6, but never win Street Fighter 5. So these moves and changes you see in Omega mode could perhaps give us a little bit of a hint on what they might have to offer for Street Fighter 6. So with that in mind, I have 5 example characters I would just like to show you what they can do in Omega mode, and a lot of it's pretty crazy. So we'll go over T.Hawk, Makoto, C.Viper, Dudley, and Hugo. So first, let's talk T.Hawk. Actually, I recently made a video about T.Hawk. You can find a link at the end of this video. And while I went over a lot of T.Hawk stuff over the ages, I didn't talk about Omega Hawk. And it's part of the inspiration of this video, as Omega Hawk is very silly. For one, he has a new command overhead. And yes, he has ground pound projectiles. So to say he deviates from the regular T.Hawk is more than an understatement. This is almost a new character in a lot of ways. New ways to pressure with a little hop overhead and a projectile, so it definitely helps his screen control. Another thing that's wild about Omega Hawk is they gave him 3 condor dives, 3 separate and distinct angles. That's sort of the usual angle, and also you can just go straight ahead. And you recover before you land, by the way, so you can go straight ahead into a body splash for same side or cross up. Come with new motions as well, so they're now just quarter circle forward, light punch, medium punch, and heavy punch, and each different punch gives you a different angle to work with. So this effectively enhances his air control, as that's one of the biggest aspects of the character. And to double down on that, they gave him a command jump where he just jumps straight up into the air, and from there, you can also do a condor dive. And more to the point, depending on how you angle it and what time you use, you can get condor dive mix-ups, basically. Since it's a special move, the command jump, you can cancel into it from normal attacks. And while it's a bit silly for sure, it just kind of, once again, just really hammers home the point, this is a character that's meant to be in the air, as airborne shenanigans is part of T.Hawk's portfolio. There's also nerfs in a way, like Light Punch Mexican Typhoon. Puts him much further out away from any Okazame, any pressure after the knockdown, right? But you get more damage. All of his pile drivers, his command grabs get more damage, much more in line with Zangief. So trying to keep the grappling more of a traditional grappling versus a lot of the mix-up potential he got from before. To that point, he has a new EX command grab. All new animation, he does the Tomahawk Buster on the way up and then spins you on the way down. Does a lot of damage, but takes 2 bars, not just 1 bar. 2 bars is actually a theme throughout Omega mode, so perhaps that's like the early V-trigger concept, maybe? But basically for a much heavier investment on your resource, you get closer to a super move than a regular EX move. Condor Spire becomes a quarter circle forward motion instead of a Dragon Punch motion, and also becomes multi-hit as well. So basically playing around with some of the properties of some of the moves. The EX version allows juggles afterwards, and anything can juggle. Before it only had been EX Tomahawk Buster, now any old thing can juggle from it, it's fine. So the takeaway from this Omega Hawk specifically is looking at a Hawk that is a much more dynamic version than what he already is. His air mobility, thanks to Condor Dive, has been greatly expanded as you have multiple versions of Condor Dives. You can cover multiple angles, also get tricky with it, with potential cross-ups as well. Giving him a command jump so he can further facilitate all these weird little airborne gimmicks. Increasing the raw power of his command grab game, but taking away the pressure of the command grab game. So maybe he has better grapples overall, but he's no longer the guy who can get, mix-ups and gimmicks after the fact, right? Leave that for Zangief. So basically trying to double down on what makes him a unique character, but also kind of pulling back on what's biting into some of the uniqueness of another character that's also a grappler. So if Hawk was ever in Street Fighter 6, this could be a preview of what he has. And yes, let's please keep that ground pound. Taking a look at Makoto, one of the biggest buffs she got right off the bat is her ability to do the tiger knee technique with her axe kicks. Basically, she can do them way lower to the ground much faster than previous Street Fighter 4 incarnations. This sort of offense went on to become very popular with Seth in Street Fighter 5. So this appeared to be the testing grounds for it, and maybe Makoto can get a taste of that in Street Fighter 6. Also, feint cancels. So her rush punch move, the Hayate, you can cancel it, right? And it can lead to combos. So you can do a normal, do a Hayate cancel, and then do another normal, and then combo with 2 normals that otherwise would never combo by themselves. If you're not used to the technique, it can be a bit tricky. You have to do the move, hold the button, then basically hit kick to cancel out of the stance. So one of her big additions in Omega mode is screw the middleman. They're just going to give you a move that does the cancel by itself. It's quarter circle forward and kick. So it's just the cancel part of the Hayate cancel. You don't do the Hayate, you just do the cancel. So this effectively lets you just do a normal, hit quarter circle forward and kick, do the cancel, and then go into whatever normal you want again and get those same combos, but much easier. The EX versions recover even faster than the regular version. So regular, you can go heavy into medium, and EX, you can go heavy into another heavy. This is identified as one of her strengths, so they're just trying to make it even easier for you to use that strength. She also got an all-new special move in a headbutt. It's a reverse Dragon Punch motion and punch. She's definitely a fan of using her head in her attacks, so why not, right? Now this is specifically to give her another armor break move, because her armor break game's pretty weak. This is more a solution to one of her Street Fighter 4 problems, I suppose you could say. Because something like this would happen a lot. One of the most interesting things about Omega Makoto is they really double down on Tenden Renki. This is basically her super where she rages out, right? So for one, you don't need a full meter to do this anymore. As long as you have at least 2 bars, you can enter this state. The more meters you have past 2 bars, basically the longer it lasts. And it can wildly change the properties of a lot of her moves, basically giving her almost free EX moves. Like the Orochi, like that's leaping overhead now. And Hayate only knocks down if you spend meter on it normally, right? But while you're in your install, then all of a sudden you gain all these new properties and you don't have to spend any meter for the bonuses. On top of doing more damage like you'd expect. So effectively, every move she has except for the command grab gets new properties, right? Either it's faster, better, stronger, some way, somehow. And this breathes whole new life into it, makes it a lot more valuable to do. It also has a great effect on her mobility now. So she has a great forward dash, back dash, and her walk speed's god-awful, right? But in the new mode, her forward dash gets a lot better, and her back dash, look at that. She's just zooming across the screen, right? So her mobility goes way up. That's one of her biggest weaknesses. And while she's in the install in Tenenrenki, her focus attack becomes a straight up parry. So she also gets more defensive options as well. Basically, instead of just, a damage buff, it's more like a dragon install now, much more valuable. So the Omega Mode changes turn Makoto into a much more dynamic offensive buzzsaw, and are heavily rewarding you, pushing you towards the Tenenrenki state, right? So Street Fighter 6, that could be an option they might be going for. Dudley has some interesting changes. Some are, small and more cosmetic, like his down medium, the sweep, is now multi-hitting, for example. One change you might initially read as a nerf is his sweep. His sweep launches, if you're not aware, and launches much further away now, right? But now it launches much further away, it can much more easily connect with his Ultra 1. So it basically gives you more potential you never had before, because before, he would always go underneath the enemy. They gave him his third strike universal overhead back as well. This is just an extra tool to help open up an enemy. One of the beauties of Dudley was he had just such a wild offensive presentation. You had so many options, and now you're adding even more options. The medium kick, heavy punch target combo now launches, and you can juggle from it. So once again here, just adding even more tools to his offense. They even change his throws. It doesn't look like much, but both throws, both forward and backward throw, leave you much closer to the enemy than you were before, so it just helps you keep your pressure in offense. Short swing blow got completely changed, so now it's basically a step. The light kick version does the step in place, and the other versions kind of step backwards, and from that, you can do follow-ups. So you can either step forward, which has a decent amount of invincibility, or you can do the step and then do an attack. Now, if you like the move, the EX version is basically a lot of what the original move is, but otherwise you get these new options. The light step gives you basically a big old punch that launches, and yes, you can juggle from it, just so you know. And the medium and heavy steps basically give you a much more standard gut punch. As for the more classic step forward punch, that's mostly unchanged unless you do the EX version, and then otherwise you basically get a free corkscrew blow. It's a pretty cosmetic change, I guess, but still, it's a fun one as that's one of Dudley's coolest moves. So the Dudley changes may be a little less wild than the T.Hawk and Makoto changes, but then again, maybe that's some confidence in the character. Dudley's always been classically a pretty well-designed character, except for Thunderbolt. That's a really stupid move. But all the things he has here, and you might notice this is a little bit of a trend, is just enhancing what he already has. The core game plan is already strong, and these are basically just a few more things to help along with it. Now, Viper's a very interesting case, as while she doesn't have too much in Omega mode, like her close medium kick now is a knockdown, which is weird and whatever. Although a quick little knockdown helps her mix-up game, the old classic 50-50, which side am I going to land on. So it's still a buff, sure enough. Because it's always fun to guess, right? One of the more interesting things, though, is they gave her a new close heavy kick. So she can still do the command normal version, which is forward heavy kick, and it has more range and it knocks down now. So it's just there to help her neutral out a little bit. So we got more knockdowns on that train of thought here. Throws. Her back throw leaves you much closer than before, and her forward throw's got a bit of a new animation. It's kind of more slower, much more impactful. I actually like that. There's even changes for the sake of changes, like her super. They gave it a new animation because her super animation was like one of the worst and most boring in all of Street Fighter 4, so now it's more interesting and dynamic. And I guess they decided her anti-air game was too weak because they gave her effectively a flash kick style move. So corsical forward kick, and she'll do a burning kick going on the way up, and the EX version, yes, is full invincible. I really never thought she had problems with anti-airs to begin with. Like, yeah, it could trade every now and then, I guess, but still. I guess the idea is they never wanted her to trade ever again, and even though she can get an ultra off the trade, which is really silly. So they gave her this move, so hey, more moves, more better, I guess, right? Now, speaking of more moves, more better, so they gave her a quarter circle forward punch, which is like a new electric punch, right? So new move, that's cool. But the big thing is this, like some of the other moves, you can cancel it. So you can do the start of the move, hit 2 punches, and then the move doesn't come out, you've just canceled the move. Now, canceling is a very, very, very big part of the character. She has her Seismo, this is her ground pound, and she can also cancel the Seismo. So she doesn't have to let it rock. So it's good for neutral, fake outs, all that kind of stuff. And very important for a specific combo structure, what we call fierce, feint, fierce. I hit you, I do the move and feint cancel it, then I hit you again. This gives me a combo that would never otherwise be possible. It's one of the hardest techniques in all of Street Fighter 4 to consistently pull off, yet however, in high level play, you are expected to know it. If you can't do it, you're losing a lot of pressure and you're losing a lot of damage. Now enter our new punch move, which can also be cancelled. This basically gives us an alternate way to do the technique. The Seismo is a dragon punch motion, so forward, down, down, forward. The new punch is just quarter circle forward. So effectively, it's just so much easier to actually do. A lot of what made Fierce Feint Fierce so hard to do was because you had to do the dragon punch motion, then your cancel, then your actual attack, right? So just being a much more simple motion in quarter circle forward, you get all the same benefit, right? But much more reasonable in terms of the execution of it. Basically an easier way to do a very difficult technique. In the early days of Street Fighter 4, the developers didn't actually expect people to be able to do it. Like, it was in the game, they just left it because, oh, well, no one's going to be actually able to do this stuff. And it went from what the developers thought was impractical to basically a necessity of high-level Viper play. So the lesson learned for Omega Viper is we want normal people to be able to do the superhuman execution normally required of Viper. It's cool tech, we want you to do it, so here's an easier way for it to be done. And finally, let's talk about Hugo. Hugo is pretty interesting. He's got some stuff, like a couple normals got changed around. They're not that big deals in the end, except for the few that are. So stand medium punch, if you hold it, it basically becomes a semi-projectile. He basically swats up a lot of dust on the screen and it can hit you. And if you're close, both will connect, the punch and the dust itself. Keep in mind, it's not a true projectile, so it does not clash with other projectiles, so you will be hit if you go for a fireball war, but on the flip, it can also hit them if they're close enough. Also a parry, because why not, right? More than a few people got parries in Omega mode. Hugo also gets an attack after the parry, so I feel this is somewhat what became Abigail's V skill. A lot of shared DNA there. He got the ability to charge stand heavy punch, and if it connected, it became a crumple, from which you can get whatever from it. This is another one where you can see the DNA passing forward, as this is another technique Abigail also has. Also borrowing some inspiration from other games, so Hugo can now charge his drop kick. So stand heavy kick is a drop kick, and the longer you hold it, the more damage and the further the drop kick will go. Raiden from King of Fighters, the charge drop kick is a big deal for that character, so that's where the inspiration's from. So, like, to get all the way real, right? Hugo is slow and ponderous at the best of times. So being able to just charge this move, hold it in your pocket, and being able to kind of fling yourself at a speed much faster than usual at the enemy, that doesn't involve a command grab like Meat Squasher, then this is a very valuable technique. It helps circumvent one of his weaknesses. Also on the weaknesses note here, so Hugo, his anti-air game is bad. Like, yeah, he has the anti-air backbreaker, but it doesn't actually work as an anti-air. Even the EX version can get counter hit out of. You gotta be lucky. So screw it. He has a DP now. He has an uppercut. He has an invincible move. So when it comes to his defense being a big problem, because people can easily run over Hugo, like rushdown is one of his biggest weaknesses, he now has a get off me move. And it lets him play the same game everyone else is playing, because now he can do FADC and other moves. Things like EX Lariat, you now have control over the move. Hold the buttons and the clothesline happens when you let go. And if you don't let go and go all the way to the enemy, nothing comes out. So that means, of course, naturally, gimmick time, because you have to worry about the threat of the hit, but sometimes it might just run in and then command grab you instead. This lets him charge in and not just be a one note, okay, I see it, I just block, punish, that kind of stuff. You actually have to pay him some respect now because he has some actual options. So for Hugo, it was the easiest thing in the world to disrespect him, right? You can just walk all over him for free. He had basically no defense, so now he has defense. And if he wanted to come at you, well, he's the biggest, slowest character in the game, right? So that was rough. Now he has options. For other characters, it's enhancing their already existing strengths, or let's make some hard things easier to work with. For Hugo, it's identifying, okay, the ultra big, ultra slow character has a lot of problems inherently in the game, right? So let's address them. And I feel that's why they did so much better with Abigail in Street Fighter V. So that's a look at Omega mode for Street Fighter 4 for some of the characters that might make Street Fighter 6. A lot of what was in Omega mode for the characters that were in the game did make Street Fighter V, and a lot of things that were kind of test bedded here in Omega mode proved to be foundational for the future games. And I feel a lot of the lessons learned here and a lot of things that were tried out just were not exclusively for Street Fighter V. They can definitely be applied later on in later games as well, like Street Fighter 6, because there's a lot of smart things here, and I feel they went crazy because let's just throw stuff to the wall and see what sticks. So that's a little bit of a showcase, showing off what some characters can do in their dream versions of the Omega mode. But I do think some of these things will find their way into Street Fighter 6 just kind of trickling along. Also, hopefully, some of these characters as well. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Both just, Omega mode, what would you like to see from Omega mode persist forward into Street Fighter 6? And also just your general hopes and fears for Street Fighter 6, because I know we're all hoping for it to be the best game it can be. That all said, my friends, we're at the end of the video, so thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some Street Fighter.